Ek wens iets wil gebeur. Niks gebeur nooit met ons nie.
Niks gebeur ooit met ons nie, ek sien.
Ek sê mos so 'n blommie.
Are we gonna win? Short answer, yes. I feel everyone needs to be careful on how they frame a statement like this though, because a lot of guys think being the eternal pessimist is always the wiser choice. There's this idea within dissident right circles, as was rightly ridiculed by people such as Jonathan Bowden, that optimism is somehow the ultimate form of cowardice. It's true that most people will win polymarket bets on nothing happening, betting on everything remaining the same, saying things will just get worse, etc. So all of that reinforces the notion that you need to be some kind of broody stoic, or just a contrarian doomsayer, in order to properly face any tasks that lie ahead, or to just have your opinion be taken seriously. I mean, yeah, it's extremely important to not fall for the dopey hype slop flooding your feeds these days, about how some new politician that Elon Musk endorses in some random-ass country is the big turning point, or some event is a historical watershed moment, because in 2 to 3 weeks, it all gets forgotten and the news cycle moves on. This can be frustrating and has turned many into annoying melancholic bitches who make a sport out of sucking the life out of any discussions. The only framing they respect is the one that makes the obstacles ahead of us seem like almost titanic, unsolvable problems. There's no shortage of this mindset either whenever people like to bring up my country, South Africa. Of course, the obvious logic is that because things in South Africa are especially dire, that it must mean that Afrikaners, Boere, should be the most doom-pilled, because we're apparently at the point of no return. The example that should make other Occidental countries shudder with fear. Being a minority in the country we built, with zero political power, taxed to oblivion, suffering under a narco-tyranny, and seemingly no real future to build towards as our young people increasingly work overseas or outright emigrate. But maybe instead of using demographic or quantitative ways of looking at things, how about we look at qualitative ways of looking at things? I mean, yeah, Occidentals are 7% of the population in South Africa now, and declining, sure, but Occidentals are also 7% of the world's population as a whole.
7? What?
So if you say the situation is hopeless and unattainable here, then it's hopeless globally. Though I'm willing to bet it's not. Yeah, I do acknowledge that things look tough going forward. We're being squeezed and censored harder than ever. There are still guys in court, guys getting doxxed and intimidated, guys getting debanked and totally ostracized. But an establishment always resorts to the most desperate methods and measures right before it's about to lose power or simply its relevance. At the moment, I'm waking up every day, my heart kind of racing with excitement, motivated by what I'm reading and seeing with each passing day. Whatever you want to call the quote-unquote culture war, cringe term, I'm aware, has really already been won everywhere that matters, i.e. in the youth, and in particular, the non-midwit intelligent cohort of the youth.
Ben Shapiro's side is losing massively. They are massively losing, at least on the internet. On the internet, there is an overwhelming support of America First, Israel Last policies.
Guys my age and even younger are openly noticing the gif-appels and admitting we can't share a country with kips. The sort of opinions that you thought would be unthinkable to see outside the most obscure corners of the internet 15 years ago are now mainstream. It's not a nothing burger that our ideas have spread so far and wide, but it's very, very, very removed from what like-minded people should be excited about. Just because your boomer relatives now retweet Tucker Carlson basically means very little on its own. And now is not the time for premature celebration. And while Mr. Blom one day does something we would call sort of based, the next day it seems like his administration really just cares about Land or making big red line go up, and fumbles the ball everywhere else. So don't be fooled into thinking I'm just optimistic because of normies, and that somehow they will save civilization. Nope. Not at all, really. Like I said, qualitative, not quantitative. And now it's all about knowing how to wisely use your time and skills going forward, considering the current, permanent obstacles, but also the real opportunities. Us here in South Africa know that probably better than anyone else. So we should be the prime example of how we're so back really, and why everyone should be white-pilled. That is a strange and bold thing to say with zero context. I mean, us in South Africa are in the worst case scenario, right? Seemingly stripped of all agency over our own affairs, used as a tax cash cow. Most of our normies brainwashed since birth to believe the only way to any power in South Africa, as Occidentals, is by submitting to the cosmopolitan 1994 Rainbow Nation idea of some kind of knockoff African Brazil, which the Kips themselves don't even believe in. Despite all that, people here who aren't even political in any way are now seeing that we gave that idea a fair shake, and anyone who still thinks that's an achievable goal is either being dishonest or is just a useful idiot. Because I mean, South Africa was supposed to be the global experiment, the blueprint to show that people are all just interchangeable parts and can be freely inserted into high-trust Occidental societies and spaces. Just hand them the economy, just show them the constitution, just give them the courts. Well, turns out, Occidentals are the only chumps that buy into this utopian idea at scale, while most everyone else just exploits this naivety. Rightfully so, everyone is pointing to South Africa now and saying, look, that's the end result. That's what's happening everywhere. South Africanization. Not that there's anything to argue or prove, but man oh man, cognitive dissonance and coping is just going to get crazier. Though what am I getting at? Since what I just said sounds super bleak and dismissive again. I mean, if we're the end stage scenario, why don't I just pack my bags and decide to do the refugee meme? Go to another Anglophone or Occidental country where I'm not a minority, where I could salvage my new host country instead. Well, maybe because I can't run away from the problem, as every Occidental country is simply somewhere along the South Africanization spectrum, and in a free fall to level 100 regardless of what plan someone devises to miraculously change their current trajectories. So people on their high horse about moving for their children are actually just moving for themselves, in passing the responsibility of dealing with South Africanization onto their progeny. Even the Anglos in South Africa, at least the ones who don't immigrate, know they're in the same boat with Afrikaners. Because Kips can't tell us apart like a phenotype expert on the apricity forums. So nah, I think it's best we all take our chances where we are and where we have established support networks, family or otherwise. And with this comes the real key that everyone should actually be excited about, wherever they are, by just looking at South Africa. Because you see, it's not game over here, at all. It never really was. While everyone else is still wondering if they should somehow perform a long march through the institutions and take over political parties, that's never been an option for us here. In South Africa, higher education and state employment in general is more candidly blocked for pro-Occidentals since the 90s. So we were made to specialize into a single direction, focused on totally parallel institutions, our own organizations and initiatives. Anyone here who is actually serious knows engaging with democracy as it's currently designed is totally redundant. But I think we're showing it stopped being about that for a long time. Everywhere. Young leaders who are starting to appear globally are taking note of this, despite all the measures being taken to f*** with them and deliberately exclude them from any political arena. While the key is not isolating yourself into a doomsday bunker, the key is also not engaging with the captured structures in trying to get mass appeal. The key is quality. The key is the vanguard. A vanguard is the radical consciousness of their group. The vanguard does not have mass appeal. It does not have quantity. It does not have the normies. But it pursues the ultimate interest of the normies, whether they ask for it, want it, or like it or not, thanklessly dragging them, kicking and screaming through the tough times.
All people who have a vanguard and elitist mentality are regarded as partly mad by their own groups, because the majority of people do not want to know. The majority of people wish to live their own life in their own way, and they only look at these broader questions when life impinges upon them and comes upon them, and the hand of life grasps them by the collar, and they really cannot do any other thing but notice what is in front of them.
Vanguards do not need to occupy parliament in order to help their people or take on the roles of governance. You'll never be mayor of London or state governor or head of treasury of whatever, but you don't for a second think that it's either that or bust. I'd even go as far as to say you don't want to be on that sinking ship. The current administrations in Occidental countries are increasingly geriatric, short-term thinking and totally exhausting their legitimacy with whatever economic or social disaster is looming in the coming years. They are going to lose the mandate of heaven eventually. And when every metro is imploding like late antiquity Rome, you don't want to be part of the ever more irrelevant and despised patrician senators, invoking the glory days of a Rome that no longer exists. You might call that risky. I mean, demographics are the future, and they just keep looking worse, right? But look closely at the data. Those same metros, filled with the rootless foreign populations, will empty out as soon as the money dries up, and they will all parasitically hop to the next big center of affluence. And when the old elite scatters to the wind, you want to be the replacement that can come into that vacuum to finish the job. Not out of complete from nowhere, but one that was preparing, waiting, putting pieces in place. You want to be like the Goths, the Franks, those groups who sat on the frontiers of power, not totally passively, always harassing, building strength, and then when the opportunity presented itself, they took the worn-out empty skeleton of the Roman state and made something of it again. With that said, it's up to these new leaders to devise plans unique to their own situations. And this all can't easily be summarized in one video, even just for South Africa long term. Every scene has slightly different solutions. Stuff that will work in Europe is not practical here, stuff that will work in Canada is maybe more complicated in Australia, etc. In South Africa, our benefit is that we are only a few million people, and everyone knows everyone on a 2-degree basis here, like a very small country. So it's best you stick to something local where you can leverage connections, and hell, build a pseudo-feudal patronage network and remain distant from all the nationwide controversies. Just maintain contact with like-minded people, so no meme chats get leaked, and then go from there with parallel structures of government.
This organization has a ton of companies and entities that they operate from. This is universities, technicons, schools.
Built by them.
Built by them, run by them. They have security companies. They have an entity that provides short-term insurance. They have an entity that provides funeral policies for their members. But analysts are saying that they have simply mainstreamed right-wing and conservative ideas.
Though on that note, there's also a tragic notion that if you aren't some kind of jack-of-all-trades gigachad leader with max attributes, that you shouldn't even bother with anything like I'm suggesting here. But we all are specced into different areas. Not everyone is an organizational genius, or even a good orator.
As jy nou vir my sê, "O, maar die man vloek." Ja, ek vloek. Ek is bevloek.
Even great men of history, while being exceptional, weren't experts at absolutely everything individually. You'll need legal teams, guys with capital, people with the ear of individuals who do have capital, and guys able to put time into organizing and increasing wealth that gets constantly reinvested towards growing whatever you're trying to build, without getting greedy along the way. As things deteriorate, you want to lunge at any chance to be the custodian of normal government functions in your local area. Cannibalize its responsibilities. It doesn't matter if it's in an unofficial capacity. Develop inconspicuous vanguards everywhere, silently taking position wherever they can wiggle their way in, nudging things into our direction as much as possible. But ultimately, biding their time, straightening their ties, waiting for the full fallout of global South Africanization to present opportunities for hijacking or appropriation of power, and de facto becoming the new elite, like vultures circling over a dying animal. With that, I'm of course not saying you should totally abandon engaging with the establishment, but don't for a second think it's anywhere near a safe bet or even the path of least resistance. The best path for growth of any vanguard's power to not just advocate policy, but to enact it, are its own initiatives. Speaking of growth, Urania is going great, and I really think it's the basis for a lot of good things in the near future. But that's of course not the only thing that we have going for ourselves in South Africa. Well, yes, everyone who plays map games probably have this view that a country is only valid if it's this roughly geometrical thing with tangible lines around it, and want to call stuff like this LARPy wastes of time. The thing is, Urania and similar projects are not mutually exclusive with more traditional methods of political actualization, and in fact, synergize with it extremely well. You can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, you know. But really, the Volksstaat isn't just pending, it's alive. Because a nation consists of the people that represent it. Right now, the Volksstaat isn't just a town. It's millions strong. Same goes for everyone internationally, by the way. Your nations exist. It's all about willing them into being something that has agency. None of our nations have really fallen until the last of us are gone, and no vanguards can exist. A lot can change in just a decade, so never blackpill. Just think about where we were back in 2015. And if I can find a reason to smile and get hyped here in South Africa of all places, then really, why are you sulking in the Americas, Australia, New Zealand, or Europe? Look around you for the leaders of the vanguards. Help them as much as you can, or be one yourself. Though for all the talk of leaders, people still like to point to a lot of infighting between Occidental groups in South Africa and globally, big and small, and want to be all doom and gloom about that. But what's the nature of this friction when you really look at it? It's mostly one guy saying one organization is cucked or not as based and competent as theirs. This, on its own, is actually a really good sign. We're arguing about who are the real based kabouters versus who's just grifting or secretly getting the call from Gippapeltjieland. It seems chaotic at first, almost like there's no direction, but I find it really beautiful, because it's a sign of motion in a movement, self-correction, refinement, separating the wheat from the chaff, keeping what works and getting rid of what doesn't, through trial and error, and a lot of competition and self-criticism. It's a bit of a Hegelian dialectic, I'd even say. Ultimately, whatever comes out the other end will leave the dissident right globally with the most optimal understanding of what needs to be done and what's required to achieve it. The creation of real vanguards. Dissident right isn't even really an appropriate label anymore. It's forming up more to be best described as ascendant right. Every day, growing a bit more, gaining a little more power, a few more thinkers, experts, and ultimately, new elites that will be ready to replace the old one that's in a total competency crisis. All the while, the Overton window is constantly being pushed in the correct direction.
I'm moving more and more
to the right.
Another sign of how the discourse is somewhat maturing is seeing guys stopping with the political labels and just calling themselves by their nation. X country first, Y tribalist, nativists, etc. And really, that's how it's supposed to be. Because let's be real, a lot of this ideology stuff has so much baggage attached to it, and it's time people stop treating it like clubhouses. The ideas we subscribe to don't belong to just one form of thinking. We're all just ultimately in opposition to the religion of Enlightenment Masonic memery and all its offshoots. One should just pick and choose policies that benefit your kind at the end of the day. Remember, just some centuries ago, and since the beginning of time really, this was obvious to the highest aristocrat and the humblest laborer what the nation's priorities should be. And that's survival and prosperity for your own. And if the Gifappels are any indication, an organized minority looking after their own is miles ahead of a disorganized majority. So yeah, we're gonna win.